The audience inside the arena held its breath as thunder shook the dome walls. Above them, alien banners fluttered, marked with the golden sigil of House Varketh, a race known across the galaxy for strength, pride, and a merciless rule. At the center of the Colosseum, her tall figure stood like a goddess carved from sapphire, draped in armor that glimmered with cold fury. She was the Empress of Varketh, taller than any being in the arena, and tonight she had come to watch a human die. He entered the arena with no armor, just a plain black shirt and worn combat pants. No weapons, no guards. The crowd laughed. Whispers filled the air. "This is their champion?" some hissed. "A soft-skinned rodent?" others barked. Yet the human kept walking, his eyes steady, his face unreadable. His name was Kale. Empress tilted her head, amused. Her lips curved into a mocking smile. She raised her hand and pointed at the ground. Her voice echoed through the arena. "Kneel, little man. I will make your death quick." But Kale didn't flinch. He just looked at the alien giants on either side of the ring Varketh's chosen. Champions, twice his size, their bodies wrapped in muscle and metal. The first charged like a beast, his roar shaking the floor. Kale sidestepped, one strike, a crack of bones. The champion hit the ground face first. The crowd gasped, stunned by how fast it happened. The second came next with twin blades spinning in his hands. Kale ducked, twisted, and broke the alien's arm with a sickening snap. From her throne above, the Empress leaned forward. Her smile had vanished. She narrowed her eyes and whispered to her guards, "Where did this human train?" But no one answered. Down below, Kale stood over the bodies of two warriors, untouched, his chest rising slowly as he stared up at her. Everyone in the Colosseum waited for the Empress to speak again. Her fingers tapped her armored thigh. Her breath was calm, but her pride was wounded. Never before had a human beaten one of her champions. Now two lay at the human's feet. And Kale had not even broken a sweat. A murmur grew across the balconies. Some aliens rose to their feet. A few clapped, unsure if it was allowed. The Empress slammed her fist on her armrest, and the sound silenced the crowd instantly. Her voice boomed like thunder. "This is not over. You have not won yet." But her voice carried something else now, fear. Kale raised his hand slowly, not in challenge, but in invitation. He pointed to the Empress directly, then to the floor in front of him. A challenge was issued, without words, but the meaning was clear. He wasn't finished. And he hadn't come just to fight her warriors. He came for her throne. Asterisk silence fell across the arena as Kale pointed at the Empress. It was not an insult. It was not a taunt. It was a clear challenge in front of thousands. The Empress narrowed her glowing eyes and stood slowly, her tall body gleaming under the spotlights. The guards around her stepped back. Even they knew what came next. Kale lowered his hand and stepped back from the fallen champions. The blood on the ground didn't belong to him. He hadn't taken a single wound. His breathing was calm, his gaze sharp. A single drop of sweat slid down his jaw. His muscles were tight, prepared for the next move. He was ready if she accepted. The Empress leapt from the throne balcony and landed. With a heavy crash that made the stone floor crack, the arena gasped. She had not entered combat in nearly 20 years. Her armor shimmered like silver flames. It wasn't just a suit of war, it was ceremonial, ancient, and earned through blood. She looked down at Kale. "You dare call me to the sands?" she said, her voice cold. "You, a creature whose species is known for weakness?" Kale said nothing. He only took a step forward. One foot dragged in the dust, drawing a half circle around himself. The line was symbolic. It meant only one would leave this arena. A bell rang out from the arena wall. It wasn't for show. It marked the beginning of something sacred. A duel by the old code. If the Empress lost, her claim to the throne would be questioned. If the human lost, his body would be burned before the crowd. The stakes were written in the blood of history. The Empress raised her hands. Long curved blades slid from the sides of her gauntlets. They hummed with ancient energy. Blue sparks lit up the air. She didn't charge at Kale, she walked. Every step was slow, powerful, filled with centuries of training. Her confidence poured into the crowd like fire into oil. Kale circled her. He had no blade, no armor, just his fists and his mind. His training was not recorded in the Galactic archives. It was not honored by tradition. It was born from human war, loss, and survival. He waited for her to strike first. She slashed. He ducked. Her other blade came low. He jumped back. Sparks flew where the blades scraped the stone. The crowd screamed. Gasps echoed from all sides. The Empress moved like a predator. Kale was the prey, or so it looked. But then Kale struck. He didn't go for her face or her chest. He went for the joint in her right leg, just beneath the plated armor. His foot struck hard. The Empress grunted and stumbled slightly. For a split second, the crowd saw it in balance. Doubt, she spun and kicked him back. Her strength sent Kale sliding across the ground. He rolled once, came back up and smiled. His lip was bleeding, his ribs ached. But he was still standing. And he had made her stumble. The Empress didn't speak this time. Her pride had been touched. Her blades lit again, brighter than before. She came faster now. She wasn't holding back. Her slashes were no longer clean or measured. They were angry, furious, wild. Kale bent under one strike and elbowed her in the side. She caught his wrist. He headbutted her. She reeled. The crowd had never seen their Empress bleed. But a thin line of blue blood now dripped from her forehead. Kale pressed forward. He used her height against her. He moved low, fast. He didn't fight with power. He fought with speed and precision. Every move had purpose. His training came not from tradition, but from necessity. From Earth's wars. From pain. The Empress growled and lifted both blades. High. Kale ducked and rolled forward. His palms slammed into her stomach. The shock made her armor pulse. She stepped back. She was breathing harder now. Her eyes locked onto his. She wasn't mocking him anymore. Around the arena, nobles watched in silence. Some shifted in their seats. Some whispered to their aides. A few looked down at their own warriors and asked the same question silently. Could you fight like that? But none dared speak aloud. The Empress charged once more, swinging both blades down with crushing speed. Kale caught her wrists. The sound of metal grinding filled the air. For a moment, they stood locked together, giant and man. Strength versus strategy, power versus purpose. Then Kale twisted. He threw her over his shoulder. The Empress hit the ground with a roar. Dust exploded around her. Her crown cracked. Her blades fell from her grip. Kale stepped back, blood on his cheek, chest rising with each breath, waiting to see if she would rise. For the first time in her reign, the Empress lay still. Her fingers clawed at the dirt. Her pride screamed louder than her voice. Her people stared in silence. Kale didn't lift his hands in victory. He didn't smile. He stood with respect. He had not come to mock. He had come to prove, and he just had. The Empress rose slowly, her tall body covered in dust and bruises. Her armor, once glowing like a god's skin, was cracked across the chest. The arena was silent. The crowd did not dare cheer. No one moved. The alien nobles in their skyboxes watched with wide eyes. The human had not only survived, he had won the first round. Kale stood still, his chest moving with every breath. Blood trickled from his eyebrow, but his eyes were clear. His arms were lowered. His stance wasn't aggressive. He didn't look like a man mocking victory. He looked like a man waiting for the next command. The Empress looked around at her people. Their silence stunned her more than the blows. No one shouted her name. No one raised a banner. Even her own guards looked down, ashamed to meet her eyes. She clenched her fists and walked toward Kale, not to attack, but to speak. "You have skill," she said, her voice sharp but calm. "But one fight does not prove strength." Kale nodded. His voice was steady. "Then let's test more then. Strength." His words were not loud, yet they reached every corner of the arena like thunder wrapped in quiet. The crowd stirred. Nobles leaned closer. This was no longer a mere duel. It was becoming something far greater. A shift in power. A challenge not just to a champion, but to the rule of Varketh itself. The Empress raised her hand, signaling for her commanders to approach. 3 figures stepped into the arena. Each one wore the golden helm of a regional warlord. They were not just guards. They were chosen leaders, conquerors from 3 systems under her rule. She looked at them and said only one thing. "Prove him wrong." Kale turned to face them without a word. His eyes measured each of them. One held a warhammer as big as Kale's chest. Another wielded a pair of short plasma axes. The third moved without visible weapons, her body clearly trained in hand-to-hand killing. Kale exhaled. They didn't wait for a signal. The one with the hammer moved first, swinging downward in a move designed to crush bones. Kale rolled sideways, grabbed a piece of broken metal from the floor, and flung it at the plasma axe wielder. It struck her in the throat, buying him a moment. He ducked under the hammer's return swing and drove his elbow into the wielder's ribs. A grunt of pain followed. Then Kale spun, kicked the female warrior in the leg, and moved back quickly before the axes could catch him. The crowd was no longer silent. Now they roared. The fight was no longer fair, but it was glorious. Kale's movements were sharp, economic, and brutal. He didn't try to overpower them. He used their size and speed against them. One axe flew from a hand. A wrist broke. A knee snapped. Within minutes, all 3 lay groaning in the dirt. The Empress did not move. Her eyes were locked on Kale. He stood again in the center of the arena, surrounded by warriors twice his size, all defeated. His chest was bleeding now, his knuckles torn. But his back was straight. He had not come to bow, the nobles whispered again. Some began speaking into their combs. Others looked at each other with fear and curiosity. This human was more than just a fighter. He was a symbol, a question none of them could answer. What if the galaxy had judged Earth too soon? The Empress stepped forward again. Her tall frame cast a shadow across Kale. She looked down, her voice lowered. "Why are you here, really?" Kale looked up at her and said, "Because your empire laughs at us. Because your people think we are weak. Because you mocked my kind in every council. I came to show you what we are." There was no pride in his tone. Only fire, only truth. The Empress stared at him for a long moment. She saw no fear in his face, no desperation, just resolve. Her lip curled slightly, but not in hate. In something closer to respect. She stepped back and spoke to her people. "This human has fought with honor. He has defeated what you called unbeatable. He has spoken truth before our eyes. I will not deny what we have all seen." The arena murmured. Some clapped slowly. Others looked around, unsure if this was a trick. But the Empress raised her hand again. "Let it be recorded. On this day, in this arena, the human named Kale proved himself greater than our strongest. Let none speak of humans as weak again." Kale remained silent. He didn't need applause. He didn't want worship. He wanted justice. He wanted change. And now, in front of thousands, he had taken the first step toward it. And they had listened. Kale stood still as the alien crowd slowly rose to its feet. The applause began with a few nobles, hesitant, unsure if it was allowed. Then more hands clapped, then more. In seconds, the arena shook with the sound of acceptance. Not love, not devotion, but recognition. The Empress turned to face the nobles in the higher rings. Her voice rang through the arena, amplified by the ancient stones built to carry judgment. We once believed humans were a footnote in galactic history. Today I see they are a sentence worth reading. Kale did not smile. He stepped back, scanning the fallen bodies on the sand. His heart beat steady. Every movement of his hands still carried tension. His training never allowed rest until it was truly over. And it wasn't over yet. A low hum echoed from above the arena. Kale looked up. So did the Empress. A massive shuttle was descending through the force field that separated the arena from the sky. The crowd fell into hushed silence again. That ship did not belong to Varkith. The shuttle bore the crest of the Galactic Council. A golden arc over 7 stars. When it landed, 4 armored council guards stepped out, followed by a single figure in purple robes. It was Councillor Jurel, one of the galaxy's most powerful political voices. He was not expected. No message had been sent. Summons had been answered. And yet here he was, descending into the arena like a god descending from orbit. The Empress narrowed her eyes. Kale did not move. Councillor Jurel stopped between them. "I've seen enough," Jurel said, his voice smooth and deep. "Broadcasts of this fight have reached every major system. The image of a human defeating Varkith's best is already spreading. Some will fear it, some will celebrate it, but all will remember it." The Empress stepped forward. "This is our matter. Our arena, our warrior. You were not called here." Jurel smiled politely. "No, but the council listens even when uninvited. And what it hears now is change." Kale stared at him. "You didn't come for the fight. You came for the message." Jurel turned to him and nodded. "Exactly. Because if a single human can do this, what happens when your kind unites under one banner, one cause, one purpose?" The Empress's face grew tight. "This is not a political shift. It was a trial, nothing more." Jurel looked at her, then gestured to the broken champion still lying in the dust. "Then your trials have become symbols, and symbols start movements." Kale knew what this meant. The council was going to use this moment, not for him, not for Earth, but for leverage. Power could shift now. Old alliances would tremble. Empires would ask questions. His victory was no longer just personal. It was historical. Jurel looked between them. "The Council will invite Earth to sit at the table of galactic affairs, no longer as observers, but as equals. This is your doing, Kale, and also your burden." The Empress turned away. Her pride was heavy, but she could not deny the truth. Her people had seen her defeated, her warriors broken. Her words, once cruel and certain, now tasted like ash. Yet she did something unexpected. She faced Kale again and bowed her head. "You came here as a challenger," she said. "You leave as something greater. I will not call you enemy. I will not call you lesser. I will call you warrior." Kale bowed his head in return. There were no cheers, no music. Just the sound of heavy breaths and shifting armor. Sometimes respect was louder than noise. Sometimes silence said everything. Jurel turned to leave. "Come, Kale. Your place is no longer in the sand. The stars await." But Kale hesitated. He looked once more at the Empress. "This isn't about thrones or politics. It started because I was tired of being laughed at. I fought to be heard. Now I want to be understood." The Empress stepped closer. Her voice was lower now. "Then help us understand. You don't need to carry your pain alone. Perhaps your strength was never about breaking others. Perhaps it was about breaking the chains that kept us apart." The words surprised Kale, not because of who said them, but because of the truth inside them. He nodded once, then followed Jurel to the shuttle. The Empress turned and raised her hand toward the crowd. "Let history remember this day. The day the galaxy listened, and they did." The shuttle lifted from the arena floor, dust spinning below its landing pads. Kale sat quietly beside Counselor Jural, the energy of the moment still burning inside him. He didn't speak. He only watched the arena grow smaller beneath them. As the ship rose into the clouds, inside the shuttle, the air was silent except for the hum of the engines. Across from Kale sat two council guards. They didn't look at him with disrespect. Their eyes held something different now. It wasn't fear. It was awareness. They had seen the broadcast too. Counselor Jural broke the silence. You shook. A pillar today. One that stood for generations. The Empress isn't just a ruler. She was a symbol of dominance. And now her people see her bleeding. That changes everything. Kale turned his head. I didn't come to break symbols. I came to prove a point. Jural raised an eyebrow. You did. But symbols don't care why they fall. Once broken, others rise to take their place. Whether you meant to or not, you've become a spark. Kale leaned back, his eyes scanning the sky through the small window. The stars were starting to appear beyond the cloud line. It felt strange. Just a week ago, he was in a Terran outpost, forgotten by most. Now his name was on the tongues of thousands. Where are you taking me? Kale asked. Jural smiled. Faintly, to the council hall on Zareth Prime, you'll speak. You'll stand before rulers and warlords who once called your kind primitive. And when they see you, they'll know Earth has arrived. Kale nodded slowly. He wasn't a politician. He didn't like speeches. But he understood the importance. The galaxy wouldn't respect Earth just because of him. They needed to see what humans truly were, not monsters. Not weaklings. But something else entirely. Hours later, the shuttle landed on Zareth Prime. The planet's sky was purple and gold, its towers shaped like blades piercing the clouds. Dozens of ships circled the airways. Kale stepped onto a landing platform, lined with lights and armored guards. Every eye followed him. Inside the council hall, voices filled the great chamber. Delegates from over 70 systems filled the curved rows. Some were massive like living statues. Others small and agile, wrapped in silk-like skins. But all fell silent when Kale entered the circle at the center. Jural's voice echoed through the chamber. This is Kale of Earth. He comes not as a conqueror, not as a servant, but as a warrior who stood before Varkith's might and was not broken. Today, he speaks. And you will listen. Kale looked at the faces surrounding him. Some cold, some curious. He spoke simply. I didn't come to impress you. I didn't fight to make history. I fought because I was tired of being looked down on. My kind humans have been mocked, ignored, and pushed aside. That ends now. No one interrupted. No one dared. Kale continued. We are not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most advanced. But we endure. We adapt. We survive. And when pushed, we fight harder than anyone expects. That's what you saw in the arena. That's what Earth is. The chamber remained still. Then a tall delegate from the Zulian Empire stood. His voice was rough. Words are wind. Why should the council give Earth a seat because of one man's fists? Kale didn't hesitate. Don't give us a seat because of me. Give us a seat because you know we'll take one eventually. I just made you look sooner. The words struck hard. Murmurs filled the air. A delegate from the Trivern Syndicate tapped her claws together. And if Earth wants war instead of peace? Kale stepped forward. Then it won't be Earth who starts it, but we won't be the ones to fall either. That's what I came to show you. Jural raised his hand. Let the record show Earth has spoken. Now let the council decide. A moment passed. Then a screen above the hall lit up with votes. One by one, systems chose yes or no. Slowly, the majority turned green. Earth was in. Kale watched the final tally. It felt unreal. Not victory, not power, just something honest. He had stood in. Sand and blood. Now he stood in marble and law. And he hadn't changed. He was still just a soldier. But now his people had a voice. As the hall emptied, Juro placed a hand on Kale's shoulder. You just rewrote history without a crown or an army. That's rare. Kale didn't reply. He only looked at the stars again. The real work was still ahead, and he would not face it alone. Asterisk, the halls of Zareth Prime echoed with new voices. Reporters, council aides, diplomats, and translators moved in waves. But one name passed through all their lips. Kale, the human who had done the impossible. The man who changed the story. Earth had been granted a seat at the galactic table, but the challenges had only begun. Every system wanted something. Some feared Earth. Others saw it as an opportunity. Kale wasn't just a warrior now. He had become a symbol, a target, a threat, and a hope. In the days that followed, messages from across the galaxy poured into the council. Some praised the decision. Others demanded it be reversed. The Empress of Varkith, however, remained silent. No threats, no speeches, no public appearances. Until now, a private message arrived at Kale's quarters. No title, no name, just a symbol. The crest of House Varkith. Inside it was a voice recording. The Empress spoke just once. Come to Varkith, alone. We are not finished. The message ended with coordinates and a time. Kale stared at the device for a long time. He didn't hesitate. He packed light, dressed simply, and boarded a shuttle. No guards, no armor. Just himself. Whatever she wanted, he had to face it. Not as a hero, but as the man who stood in her ring. The journey to Varkith was long and silent. As he neared the system, patrol ships scanned his vessel, but did not stop him. When he landed, no soldiers waited. Only a single transport, unmarked and quiet. He entered without speaking. The driver never looked back. They crossed the capital in silence. Alien towers rose like blades. Statues of the Empress stood on every corner, yet none of them showed her with a wound. None of them captured that moment in the arena. Only power, untouched, untouchable. Until him. The transport stopped at a private gate deep inside the palace grounds. Kale stepped out into the open garden surrounded by obsidian walls and trees that shimmered with blue fire. She was waiting for him under a curved arch of metal and stone. The Empress no longer wore armor. She stood tall in ceremonial robes, her hair braided back, her posture still regal. But her eyes were different. They carried no mockery, no hate. Only something thoughtful, reflective. She nodded once. You came, she said. Kale nodded back. You called. She turned and walked along the garden path. He followed. Neither spoke for several minutes. The quiet between them was not heavy. It was full of meaning, even without words. She finally stopped beside a low pool of clear water. Her reflection shimmered in it. I was raised to believe strength was dominance. That respect was taken by force. That honor was built through fear. You broke that in front of my people. Kale said nothing. She continued. I hated you in that moment, not because you won, but because you showed me the lies I had lived by. I could not sleep for nights after your departure. Not from shame, but from clarity. She looked at him directly. I called you here not for war, but for understanding. How do your people learn strength without cruelty? Kale stepped closer. Because we've had enough of it. We learned the cost. And we decided we wanted something better. We fail often. But we try. The Empress lowered her gaze. Would you help me teach that? The question struck him harder than any blade. What are you asking? She turned again. Help me rebuild what I broke, not with violence, with vision. My people need to see a different path. One not built on domination, Kale exhaled. The idea scared him more than any arena. To lead without a weapon. To teach those who once called him lesser. But deep inside, He knew this was the reason he had come. Not to defeat her, but to awaken her. "I will," he said at last. "But not as your servant, not as your tool. I come as a human. Equal in voice, equal in will." She nodded slowly. "Then you will have that place. Not beside my throne, but beside my change." Together they walked the path again. Not as enemies, not as rivals, but as two beings who had fought, bled, and understood. And in that moment, a new alliance was born. One the galaxy would speak of for generations, not carved in conquest, but in choice. Months passed since the arena fell silent. The fight between Kale and the Empress had become legend. Not just on Varkith, but across the stars. Videos of his victory played on news grids. Children painted his image beside warriors of myth. But Kale avoided the spotlight. He had not come for fame. He stayed because something inside him believed real change was possible. And the Empress, now called Queen in Reform, had started the work. Not with speeches or banners, but with action. With truth. With humility. Alien generals who once bowed only to power now sat in councils beside thinkers, farmers, and even Terran advisors. New training centers opened across Varkith, not to build more weapons, but to share cultures, ideas, and strengthen unity. It was slow, it was hard, but it was real. Kale walked the gardens every morning, the same path where the Queen first asked him to help. She no longer commanded him, she listened. Together, they had rewritten what leadership looked like. And even her harshest enemies could no longer deny her change. One evening, as stars blinked above the black domes of the capital, the Queen stood on her palace balcony. Below, the city pulsed with lights, markets, and life. She turned as Kale approached. She was not dressed in armor or robes, just a plain silver sash and simple sandals. "I never thought my people would cheer a Terran's name," she said. Kale smiled. "I never thought I'd stand beside the one who called us vermin." She raised an eyebrow. "I never said that." Kale gave her a look. "You meant it, though." She chuckled softly and nodded. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just reflective. She looked at him, her eyes calm. "Do you think this peace will last?" Kale looked out at the stars. "Nothing lasts unless people work to protect it. But what we build here together is stronger than fear. Stronger than pride." She studied him for a moment. "You've changed too, Kale. You came here full of fire. Now you carry water." He tilted his head. "Water carves through stone. Sometimes that's what empires need." She smiled. "You speak like a leader." He shook his head. "I speak like a man who's seen enough war." That night, the Queen made an announcement. It echoed through the galaxy. She invited Earth to co-author the new Council Code of Honor, a set of rules not based on power, but on respect, fairness, and shared survival. The old systems resisted, but others followed. Soon, humans weren't just guests in council rooms. They led missions. They trained alongside Varkith's finest. Terran engineers helped repair broken moons. Varkith doctors helped stop a plague on Mars. For the first time, peace wasn't a treaty. It was a choice made daily. The Queen and Kale were invited to the Grand Assembly on Zareth Prime. This time, they walked side by side, not in conflict, but as partners. Delegates stood as they entered. Many bowed, some cheered. And when Kale spoke, they listened. "We are different, but not divided," he said. "We are strong, but not cruel. We remember what it means to be weak. That is why we do not crush others, we lift them. Because power is not proven by who we break. It is proven by who we protect." When the vote came, the Assembly agreed to rewrite the Code of Honor. Earth and Varkith together would lead the drafting council. What began in blood now ended in agreement. What began as a fight was now a foundation. That evening, Kale returned to the garden once more. The Queen was there, sitting alone. He joined her on the bench carved from stone. "Do you regret calling?" Me to that arena? He asked. She thought for a moment. I regret underestimating you. But I do not regret what followed. Kale nodded. You could have killed me back then. She looked at him. And you could have destroyed me. But we both chose something harder. He looked at her hands. Once made for command. Now open. We chose to build instead of burn. She reached over and placed a small emblem in his palm. The seal of Varkith, newly etched with Earth's insignia beside it. You are part of us now, she said. Not as a guest, but as a flame in our future. Kale closed his hand around it. And for the first time in his life, Kale felt he belonged not to a world, but to something far greater. Not a throne, but a legacy.